The ultimate orchid care calendar. To understand the seasonal care of your orchids, you need to understand your orchids a little bit better. And orchids growing out in the wild are exposed to all of those elements. And the majority of the orchids that we grow in our homes are those epiphytic ones, which grow out on the branches of trees. So those are really exposed to all of that rain, the wind, sun to different degrees, and to temperature fluctuations. And all of these are controlled by your seasonal cycles. And your orchids have adapted themselves to these seasonal cycles. In fact, these seasons regulate the orchid's processes from growing to flowering and dormancy. So, in our artificial environments, our homes, we need to relate our orchid care to their expected changes in climate. Welcome to the Nature Company. Today we're going over seasonal care for your orchids to ensure they thrive and bloom. If this is the kind of information you're interested in, please hit that subscribe button down below if you hadn't already, and that notification bell to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. The spring awakening. Orchids, after that long winter rest, are wound up like a tight spring and ready to burst into action. So we have to ensure that we can give them all that they need during this season. And it's the time of year where we're going to be repotting and dividing a lot of them. This is when all that new growth is starting to happen, the new roots are coming out, and we want to be able to divide them up, to open them out so we can let all that new light and air movement in and around the orchids to help promote all that new growth. And with all that new growth happening, we need to ensure we're giving it the right nutrients. This is the time to be sure you're giving it enough nitrogen so that all that good, strong new growth can happen. So as spring comes into action, you're going to be increasing the frequency of your feeding again, so you're ensuring that you're giving it all the nutrition it needs to keep growing. And now that your orchid's getting all that fresh, new, fast growth, we need to be very aware that all that tender new growth is going to be particularly susceptible to disease and pests. So we're going to have to start in spring with our preventative measures to ensure that they don't get infected or attacked by either. And this is the way we can be sure our plant is going to be nice and strong and healthy for that summer growth, the summer bounty. With all that new spring growth that's taken place, you want to ensure that you can keep it growing well and strong. So now you have to apply a balanced fertilizer. You want to ensure that you're giving it enough potassium and phosphorus as well as all that nitrogen to ensure that you're getting strong cell walls and strong healthy growth. Also at this point, with all that growth, you want to be sure that it's not being depleted of calcium, because with calcium deficiencies, you can start getting that blackening new growth tips and dying off new growths. So you want to be sure that you're keeping up with your calcium and magnesium feeding during that summer. And while it's growing beautifully, your temperatures start rising. So now you have to manage your watering more carefully. So with those higher temperatures, you're going to have a faster rate of evaporation, so you may have to water more frequently. With those higher temperatures comes another problem for orchids. People start cranking up those ACs, those air conditioners. The last thing we want is that cold, dry air blowing onto your orchids. It is extremely detrimental to them. So ensure that they're kept out of those ice cold drafts from those air conditioners. But that's not to say we still don't have to protect our orchids from the heat. So with a little bit of extra shading and good air movement are excellent ways to reduce the heat stress on your orchids. Also, you may need to increase your humidity levels, especially if you're in your hot, dry areas. You want to use things like evaporation trays or humidifiers to help keep the humidity around your orchid higher so it doesn't transpire too quickly, causing dehydration. And then we get the autumn transition. This is the time when we have to start reducing our feeding. We slowly taper back our feeding because, for one, we don't want to force too much new growth out of that orchid during this period when those tender shoots could be susceptible to the cold or the dry. So at this time, we'd like all those new growths to mature and harden off so that our plant is less susceptible to any of the ravages that may come during winter. With reduced feeding and growth on our plant, we're also going to have to reduce the watering. The plant itself is going to need less water for those new growths. Also, as the temperatures drop, so less evaporation will take place, meaning your media is going to stay damp for longer. Also, with those lower temperatures, we're going to have less transpiration from the plant, meaning your orchid is going to be absorbing less moisture from the media. So if we keep our watering levels high, all we're going to be doing is leaving too much moisture in the media for too long, which will then start causing problems for your plant, like rotting of the roots. And we're doing all of this to harden off the orchid, to prepare it for its dormancy in winter and the winter rest. At this point, we're going to be giving our orchid minimal care. We're reducing that watering right back, and we're also reducing the fertilizing. With some of them, we're going to be giving them none at all. One of the reasons that we reduce the fertilizing even further is because if we're reducing the watering, we don't want any excess salt buildups in the media that will happen without that extra water to flush it away. So other than reducing your growth, we also want to reduce the problem of possible salt burn. Not all orchids go completely dormant during that winter period, but those that do, ensure that they're kept one side so that they're not getting any water or food at all. For orchids like Phalaenopsis that grow all year round, even during winter, where your winters get incredibly cold, it is best to allow them to go somewhat dormant by allowing the media to dry out somewhat so that they're not damaged by the cold. Also, they do need to go down to temperatures of around 15 degrees Celsius in that winter to really produce those flower spikes properly. They lack a high temperature differentials at those times of year, so they can produce this for you in the next season. And another important factor during winter is the amount of light your orchids are getting. So particularly those ones from tropical areas that are used to long daylight hours all year round, during those winter periods, you are going to have to add extra light. So if you have grow lights or something, that's going to be a good idea to add those extra daylight hours on to ensure that your plant itself can grow and thrive. In winter, remember to optimize your light. The higher latitudes, the closer to the window you can push your orchid, the more direct sun it will be able to take in those winter months, because your sun is going to be a lot less strong and you have a lot fewer daylight hours. So we want to maximize the amount of light that your orchid can get during those winter periods to keep it healthy. Understanding these seasonal orchid care essentials are going to help your orchids thrive. If you need any further information on any of these, please check up in that Buy Me a Coffee link down below. Ed puts up a lot of orchid related content there all the time. And don't be shy, sign up, become a member, get all that bonus content and grow like a pro. If you have anything to add or share, or a horror story of what went wrong, drop it in the comments box below and join the conversation. And thank you for watching. If you found any of this information helpful, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button down below, and that notification bell, bing bong, to be notified of all our upcoming content so you don't miss out on a thing. Help us grow as we help your orchids grow.